Right now, at this very moment, as you sit watching this video on your phone, your laptop, your television, something is unfolding in the Middle East that has shaken pastors, theologians, intelligence analysts, military strategists, rabbinical scholars, and even hardened secular journalists to their core. Ancient words inscribed on scrolls of animal hide over 2,500 years ago by Hebrew prophets who claim to hear the voice of the Almighty appear to be manifesting on the world stage, not in vague metaphors, not in loose poetic symbolism, but in specific, named, datable, verifiable events. This is not speculation, this is not clickbait, this is not a conspiracy theory designed to scare you into submission. These are documented events, confirmed by major news outlets, government statements, and on-the-ground footage that align with biblical prophecies with a precision that has become impossible to dismiss. And here's what most people don't realize. There are layers hidden inside these prophecies that almost nobody is talking about, connections that run deeper than the headlines, patterns that were invisible until this very moment in history. By the end of this video, you will have seen things you cannot unsee, and you will have to decide for yourself what it all means. But I'll tell you this right now, whether every detail has fully materialized or is still in motion, the direction is unmistakable, the convergence is real, and the time to prepare is not tomorrow. It's now. Something terrifying is happening right now in the Middle East. Don't skip ahead, every minute of this matters. Let's begin where it all begins, where it always begins. Jerusalem. There is no other city like it on the face of the earth. No other city that three world religions call sacred. No other city that has been conquered, destroyed, rebuilt, and fought over more times in human history. No other city that sits at the intersection of empire, faith, war, and prophecy like a spiritual fault line running through the heart of civilization. And no other city that was named by God Himself as the epicenter of the end of the age. Open your Bible, turn to the book of Zechariah, chapter 12, verse 3. The prophet Zechariah, writing approximately 520 years before the birth of Christ, records these words from the mouth of the Almighty. On that day I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock for all the nations. All who try to move it will injure themselves. Stop, read that again, let every word land. An immovable rock, not a pebble, not a stumbling block. A rock, an object so heavy, so embedded, so impossible to relocate that anyone who attempts to move it will be injured in the process. For all the nations, not some, not a few neighboring kingdoms, all the nations. Now open your eyes, look at 2026. The escalation between the United States, Israel, and Iran in February 2026 has become one of the most significant geopolitical crises of our lifetime. What began as targeted strikes rapidly evolved into a wider confrontation with consequences that have rippled across the entire globe, collapsing oil markets, triggering emergency NATO consultations, destabilizing currencies, and pulling every major world power into a vortex centered on one tiny patch of land in the ancient Middle East. Iran's missile attacks remained focused on highly populated areas of Israel, especially Jerusalem. But the strikes didn't stop at residential neighborhoods. They expanded to target the Heifer oil refinery, the area surrounding Israel's nuclear facility at Dimona, petrochemical plants, and critical power infrastructure. In Jerusalem's Old City, that ancient, sacred 35-acre compound where Abraham offered Isaac, where Solomon built the first temple, where Jesus was crucified, and where Mohammed is believed to have ascended to heaven, faces unprecedented strain as missile fire, shifting security policies, and rising tensions between communities reshape daily life across all four of its historic quarters. But here's what most people don't see behind the headlines. This crisis carries enormous religious and socio-political dimensions. The sectarian landscape of the Middle East, the ancient divide between Sunni and Shia Islam, is being weaponized. Iran, the dominant Shia power, now stands in open warfare against Israel and its allies. And at the center of the religious dimension sits one issue that supersedes all others: the status of Jerusalem and its holy sites, especially Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Temple Mount. This issue resonates with billions of people across Muslim, Jewish, and Christian communities worldwide. And it's not just Iran. Israel-Lebanon tensions have escalated sharply as Israeli officials rejected diplomatic talks amid rising border security concerns. Hezbollah, Iran's most powerful proxy, remains entrenched on Israel's northern border with an estimated 150,000 missiles pointed southward. As recently as June 2026, Turkey's interior minister, referencing the capture of Aleppo and Damascus by Turkish-backed Islamist forces, publicly threatened that Jerusalem would be returned to Turkish dominion. Not influence, dominion, an Ottoman-era word, deliberately chosen. Washington, meanwhile, is signaling its intent to pull back from the region. Younger generations in both American political parties are increasingly critical of Israel. Jerusalem is scrambling to diversify its strategic dependence. And every move, every speech, every vote, every missile circles back to one city. The Middle East remains the most geopolitically volatile region on the planet. And developments in Jerusalem carry implications that extend far beyond its ancient walls, affecting global stability, trade routes, energy markets, and the foreign policies of every major nation. An immovable rock, a burden for all nations, all who try to move it will injure themselves. Written 2,500 years ago, manifesting today in your newsfeed in real time. Now here's hidden revelation number 1. Turn to Ezekiel chapter 38. The prophet Ezekiel, writing during the Babylonian exile, roughly 2,600 years ago, describes a specific military coalition that will form against Israel in what he calls the latter years. He doesn't speak in generalities, he names names. The coalition is led by Gog of the land of Magog, a figure who is the prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal. Biblical scholars across centuries have identified these territories with remarkable consistency. Magog, Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal correspond to regions in modern-day Russia, the great power to Israel's far north. This coalition, Ezekiel says, includes Persia, that's Iran. He names Kush, modern Sudan, and parts of East Africa. He names Putin, modern Libya. He names Gomer and Beth Togarmah, territories many scholars associate with Turkey. Russia, Iran, Turkey, Libya, Sudan named specifically 2,600 years ago. Now look at 2026. Russia and Iran have deepened military cooperation dramatically throughout the 2020s. Russia relies on Iranian drone technology. Iran relies on Russian diplomatic cover at the UN Security Council. Their alliance is no longer theoretical, it is operational. Turkey, under its current leadership, has pivoted sharply away from its Western NATO allies and toward an increasingly Islamist, neo-Ottoman foreign policy, openly threatening to reclaim Jerusalem. Iran's strategy of encirclement, using Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, Houthis in Yemen, and Shia militias across Syria and Iraq, has created a physical ring of hostile forces around Israel. A logistical highway for invasion that runs from Tehran through Baghdad through Damascus and right to Israel's northern border. The 2026 conflict has transformed these alliances from strategic partnerships into an active war footing. Iran's disruption of the Strait of Hormuz, through which approximately one-fifth of the world's oil supply flows, has sent shockwaves through every economy on Earth. The prophet saw an alliance from the far north. He named Persia, he named the nations surrounding Israel, and in 2026 those exact nations, for the first time in modern history, are aligned in active military, economic, and ideological opposition to the State of Israel. Whether this is the final fulfillment or the dress rehearsal, the pieces are on the board, the actors are in position, and the script they're following was written 26 centuries ago. Be ready. Now here's where the prophetic picture takes an extraordinary and deeply moving turn. Because prophecy isn't only about war and destruction, it's also about restoration, about a divine invitation extended to the entire human race. The prophet Isaiah wrote in chapter 56, verse 7, "My house will be called a house of prayer for all nations." And the psalmist declares in Psalm 122, verse 6, "Pray for the peace of Jerusalem, may those who love you be secure." For centuries, for millennia, theologians asked a question that seemed unanswerable. How could all nations, every tongue, every tribe, every people gather together to pray for one city? The logistics alone seemed impossible. The distances too vast, the divisions too deep, the languages too many. Until now. On October 4, 2026, Jerusalem becomes the center of the largest annual Christian expression of solidarity with Israel and the Jewish people. More than 70 million Christians from 175 nations are expected to unite in prayer during the 24th Annual Day of Prayer for the Peace of Jerusalem, making it the largest prayer gathering for Israel in recorded human history. 70 million voices, 175 nations, one city, one prayer. Hosted by Eagle's Wings and its founder, Bishop Robert Stearns, the event will be broadcast live from the Tower of David Jerusalem Museum. 500 senior Christian leaders from 50 countries will gather in person, including official government delegations from Nigeria, Kenya, and Togo, led by the First Ladies of Nigeria and Kenya and the King and Queen of Togo. Kings, queens, first ladies, government officials, pastors, missionaries, ordinary believers from every continent, all converging on one city with one prayer on their lips. A major Latin American delegation of 175 Christian leaders, headed by Reverend Jose Wellington Costa Jr., of Brazil's Assemblies of God, represents more than 51 million Christians across the region, 51 million believers represented by a single delegation. And it doesn't stop there. 3 days later, on October 7, 2026, the anniversary of the Hamas attack, believers across the world unite for a historic 24-hour global prayer chain for Israel. Beginning in the Pacific and rolling westward across every continent, churches, ministries, prayer rooms, and movements link together in nonstop intercession for Jerusalem, the people of Israel, the hostages and their families, and Jewish communities facing rising antisemitism worldwide. The prayer chain is anchored at the Western Wall and broadcast globally across every time zone. 24 hours every time zone, nonstop. But here's what most people don't know. The annual Day of Prayer is just one thread in a much larger tapestry. The Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast, a prayer movement initiated and chaired by Knesset member Robert Ilatov and co-chaired by former U.S. Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann, convenes May 26-28, 2026. Sitting legislators, active politicians, hosting a global prayer movement for Jerusalem inside the corridors of governmental power. And on May 7, 2026, the United States National Day of Prayer carries a theme inspired by King David's prayer of thanksgiving in 1 Chronicles 16. The very prayer David offered after bringing the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem. America's National Prayer Day themed around King David's prayer for Jerusalem. The same year 70 million believers gather for the peace of Jerusalem. Coincidence? Read the scriptures and decide. Now here's the revelation that binds it all together, and it will send chills down your spine. Isaiah chapter 62, verses 6 through 7. I have posted watchmen on your walls, Jerusalem. They will never be silent day or night. You who call on the Lord, give yourselves no rest, and give him no rest till he establishes Jerusalem and makes it the praise of the earth. Watchmen on the walls who never fall silent, day or night, until God establishes Jerusalem. Eagle's Wings has created a program called, and I want you to hear this clearly, Watchmen on the Wall. The exact phrase, taken directly from Isaiah 62. The program equips Christians worldwide for informed intercession and active support of Israel through learning, prayer pilgrimages, and commissioning. Participants are sent out as advocates and intercessors, watchmen who do not fall silent. The prophet said watchmen would be posted. In 2026, they have taken their positions in prayer rooms, in churches, in homes on every continent, 70 million of them. Whether every detail of this gathering has reached its ultimate prophetic fulfillment or is still building momentum towards something even larger, the direction is unmistakable. The nations are gathering, the prayers are rising, the watchmen are on the wall. And if even a fraction of what Isaiah described is materializing before our eyes, the only wise response is not debate. It's preparation. And now we come to the prophecy that changes everything. The one that has theologians arguing, the one that has rabbis preparing, the one that has intelligence agencies watching, the one that Jesus himself, with his own voice in his own words, told his disciples to look for. This is the one that should make every believer on the planet stop scrolling and start praying. The prophet Daniel writes in chapter 9, verses 26 and 27 about a future figure, a prince, an authority who will confirm a covenant, and then in the middle of that period cause the daily sacrifice to cease. He calls this event the abomination of desolation. Jesus references Daniel's prophecy directly in Matthew 24, verse 15. So when you see standing in the holy place, the abomination that causes desolation, spoken of through the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. And the Apostle Paul adds a stunning detail in 2 Thessalonians 2:4, describing a future figure who sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. Now here's the critical question, the question that theologians have wrestled with for nearly 2,000 years. These prophecies describe sacrifices being stopped. They describe a figure entering God's temple, but the second temple was destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. The sacrificial system ended, the priesthood was scattered. For 20 centuries there has been no temple, no altar, no sacrifice, no priesthood. For Daniel's prophecy to reach its ultimate fulfillment, for Jesus' warning to find its target, for Paul's description to become reality, a third temple would need to exist. And this is where 2026 becomes the most significant year in prophetic history since 1948. Momentum surrounding the possibility of a third temple in Jerusalem is intensifying at a pace that has stunned even veteran prophecy scholars. Israeli officials, prominent rabbis, and religious leaders are openly, publicly, discussing Jewish worship rights and future construction plans connected to the Temple Mount. Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir declared during Jerusalem Day celebrations that Israel has restored sovereignty over the Temple Mount. Not a fringe rabbi, not an anonymous blogger. A senior member of the Israeli government standing on the Temple Mount declaring sovereignty. Ben-Gvir's repeated visits to the Temple Mount are part of a broader effort to reshape the policies that have governed the site since the Six-Day War in 1967. For decades, the status quo prohibited Jewish prayer on the Mount. That prohibition is crumbling. Jewish worship activities, prayer, singing, bowing, recitation of psalms, are becoming increasingly visible as security policies evolve. And it goes further. Rabbi Eliyahu, a prominent religious authority, is actively urging Israeli leaders to establish a synagogue on the Temple Mount as a precursor to future temple. Listen to that word, precursor, not replacement, not alternative. A precursor is something that comes before the main event. Now here is the part that will make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Because what I'm about to tell you is not rumor, it is not speculation. It is documented, photographed, filmed, and publicly displayed by the organizations responsible. Years of meticulous preparation by religious organizations in Israel have laid the groundwork required for renewed temple worship. And when I say groundwork, I mean every physical element needed to resume the sacrificial system that ended in 70 AD. Let me give you the inventory. Priestly garments recreated to precise biblical specifications. White linen robes, the turban, the sash, the breastplate of the high priest with its 12 gemstones representing the 12 tribes of Israel, done. Sacred temple vessels, over 90 sacred objects have been reconstructed. The gold and silver vessels used in the daily service, the incense altar, the showbread table, the copper laver for priestly washing, done. The golden menorah, a full-scale 150-pound gold-covered menorah, recreated according to the exact dimensions described in Exodus 25, sits completed and displayed in Jerusalem's Old City within direct sight of the Temple Mount. Done. The altar of sacrifice, a prefabricated altar designed for rapid assembly on the Temple Mount, has been constructed and tested. Done. Musical instruments, lyres, harps, and silver trumpets described in the Psalms and in the Levitical worship manuals have been recreated. Done. Levitical priests, men verified through DNA testing and genealogical research, as descendants of the priestly tribe of Levi, are actively receiving training in sacrificial procedures, temple worship, and Levitical music. In progress. Architectural blueprints, detailed construction plans for the Third Temple, based on Ezekiel's temple vision in chapters 40 through 48, have been drawn up, complete. Cornerstone stones, massive limestone blocks for a future temple structure, are currently being quarried and prepared at a site outside Jerusalem. In progress right now. Every single element prepared, cataloged, ready. The only thing missing is the building itself, and the ground on which to build it. Whether the final construction happens tomorrow or in 10 years or in a generation, the preparation is undeniable, the direction is unmistakable, and the prophetic implications are staggering. Because here's what history teaches us: prophecy doesn't always arrive in a single dramatic moment. Sometimes it builds, quietly, methodically, piece by piece, until the day arrives when the final piece slides into place and the world realizes it was watching the whole time and didn't understand what it was seeing. Be ready. Now I need to tell you about the single most overlooked prophetic development of our generation, the one that most churches aren't preaching about, the one that most news outlets have ignored, and the one that may be the key that unlocks the entire Third Temple timeline. In the book of Numbers, chapter 19, God gives Moses a strange and specific command. A perfect red heifer, completely unblemished, without a single white or black hair on its entire body, must be slaughtered, burned entirely to ashes, and those ashes mixed with living water. This mixture, and only this mixture, can purify anyone who has come into contact with death. Why does that matter? Because according to Jewish law, every person alive today is ritually impure through contact with death. Every priest, every Levite, every worshiper. Without the ashes of a perfect red heifer, no priest can serve, no altar can be consecrated, no temple can operate. The red heifer is not a minor detail, it is the prerequisite for everything, the key that turns the lock. And for nearly 2,000 years, since the destruction of the Second Temple, there has been no qualified red heifer, no purification, no possibility of restored temple worship. The Talmud records that only 9 red heifers were prepared in all of Jewish history. The 10th, tradition says, will be prepared in the age of the Messiah. The 10th. In 2022, 5 red heifer candidates were transported from a ranch in Texas to Israel. They were raised under rabbinical supervision, inspected regularly for disqualifying blemishes, and kept in controlled conditions. And then it happened. A ceremony involving the burning of red heifers was conducted in Samaria in July 2025. Purification rituals using the ashes are actively underway. Priests and temple grounds are being cleansed with those ashes, marking the first such purification in over 2,000 years. 2,000 years. The last time this ceremony was performed, the Second Temple was still standing. Jesus of Nazareth walked the streets of Jerusalem, Rome ruled the known world, and the priesthood served daily before the altar of God. And now, in our lifetime, the ashes are being prepared again. The purification has begun again. The spiritual mechanism required to restart temple worship has been activated. Whether this specific heifer meets every rabbinical qualification perfectly, whether the process requires additional attempts, the process has begun. The door that was sealed for 20 centuries has been pushed open. And once a door like that opens, it doesn't close easily. And here's something that has received almost no attention in the mainstream media, but is prophetically explosive. After nearly 2,000 years buried beneath layers of destruction, rubble, and earth, the ancient pilgrimage road, the stone path that led from the Pool of Siloam to the Temple Mount, has been excavated and reopened to the public. This is the exact road that Jewish pilgrims walked when they ascended to worship at the temple, the road Jesus walked, the road his disciples walked, the road where psalms of ascent were sung as families climbed toward the house of God. It was buried in 70 AD when the Romans destroyed the temple and leveled Jerusalem. For 2 millennia, it lay silent beneath the rubble of fallen empires. And now, in our generation, the stones have been uncovered, the road has been cleared, the path to the Temple Mount is being walked again. It's as if the very ground is preparing, as if the stones themselves are being resurrected, testimony in mineral and rock that something is approaching. Jesus said in Luke 19 verse 40, "I tell you, if these were silent, the very stones would cry out." The stones are no longer silent. For 56 years, from 1967, when Israel captured the Temple Mount in the Six-Day War, to the present day, the official policy was restraint. The Jordanian Waqf administered the site. Jews could visit but not pray, not sing, not bow. The status quo held fragile and uneasy year after year after year. That status quo is disintegrating. 2 major shifts are fueling the transformation: increasing political support for Jewish prayer rights on the Temple Mount and expanding rabbinical approval for Jewish presence and worship activities at the site. Both shifts have intensified dramatically under Israel's current government coalition, which includes openly religious nationalist parties that view Jewish sovereignty over the Temple Mount not as a political goal, but as a biblical mandate. Jewish worship activities, including prayer, singing, and bowing, are becoming more visible as security policies evolve. Each visit by a senior official, each prayer whispered on the Mount, each psalm recited in the shadow of the Dome of the Rock, pushes the Overton window further toward a reality that was unthinkable a decade ago. And this isn't happening in a vacuum, it's happening in the context of everything else we've discussed: the military coalition forming, the global prayer gatherings, the red heifer ashes, the prepared vessels, the trained priests, the uncovered road. Each element alone could be dismissed, but together they form a pattern so coherent, so directional, so aligned with ancient prophecy that dismissing it requires more faith than believing it. And here's one more detail, a hidden layer that most people have never been taught, that has rabbinical scholars and Christian numerologists arriving at the same conclusion from opposite directions. The Hebrew year 5786, which corresponds to 2025-2026 on the Gregorian calendar, carries an extraordinary numerical signature. In Hebrew gematria, the ancient practice of assigning numerical values to Hebrew letters, the sacred name YHWH Yahweh equals 26, the Gregorian year 2026. The Hebrew year 5786 ends in 86, and its digits sum to 26, 5 plus 7 plus 8 plus 6. The number 86 is the gematria value of Elohim, the word for God used in Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. Both divine names, YHWH and Elohim, encoded in the same paired year. This convergence is exceedingly rare. Jewish rabbinical tradition teaches that human history follows a 7,000-year framework mirroring the 7 days of creation, 6,000 years of human labor, followed by a 1,000-year Sabbath rest. Ancient rabbinical calculations suggest that we are now approaching the final years of the 6th millennium, the threshold of the Sabbath age. Whether you accept numerological interpretation or not, whether you see it as confirmation or coincidence, the convergence of this mathematical pattern with the geopolitical events, the prayer gatherings, the temple preparations, and the red heifer purification all occurring in the same year is, at minimum, worthy of your serious attention. And at maximum, it's a signature, a timestamp, a divine watermark pressed into the fabric of time itself. The prophet speaks of a vast host coming like a storm, like a cloud covering the land. He describes an invasion force attacking a people living in unwalled villages, a people gathered from many nations, brought back to their ancient homeland. Iran's strategy of regional encirclement represents the tactical infrastructure for exactly this kind of coordinated assault. Hezbollah to the north with 150,000 rockets, Hamas and Islamic Jihad to the southwest, Houthi missile capabilities from Yemen to the south, Shia militias embedded across Syria and Iraq to the east, and Iran's own ballistic missile program capable of reaching every city in Israel, anchoring the entire architecture from 1,000 miles away. A ring of fire surrounding one nation, exactly as the prophet described. And here's the part that should make every world leader lose sleep. Russia Magog, the power from the far north, is not a passive observer. The relationship between Russia and Israel has deteriorated significantly throughout the 2020s. As Russia deepened its military cooperation with Iran, exchanging drone technology, intelligence, and diplomatic cover, it has abandoned any pretense of neutrality. Russia benefits directly from the oil price spikes caused by the Strait of Hormuz disruption. Every barrel that doesn't flow through the Gulf enriches Moscow. The 2026 crisis has not only aligned these nations militarily, it has created economic incentives for them to remain aligned. War isn't just ideology for this coalition, it's profitable. And here is the development that almost no one is discussing, and it could be the most dangerous of all. Egypt, Israel's oldest peace partner, the foundation stone of Middle Eastern stability since the Camp David Accords of 1978. In recent years, Egypt has adopted an increasingly confrontational posture toward Israel. Egyptian military forces have simulated Hamas-style infiltrations in exercises conducted on Israel's southern border. A significant portion of Egypt's population remains sympathetic to the Muslim Brotherhood, the ideological parent of Hamas. And the peace agreement itself is heavily underpinned by American financial aid to both nations, aid that both Washington and Jerusalem have signaled may soon diminish or cease. Without American aid, the economic incentive for Egypt to maintain peace evaporates. And here's the detail that should alarm every analyst on the planet. Cairo has been building, under Russian authority and Russian financing, its own nuclear power plant at El Daba, west of Alexandria. The first of 4 reactors is scheduled to become operational as early as 2027. Russia building Egypt, a nuclear power plant, operational next year. A nuclear-capable Egypt free from American financial dependency would possess the autonomy to act against Israel independently. The southern border, which has been Israel's most secure flank for nearly 5 decades, could become its most vulnerable. And Ezekiel's prophecy, it includes nations from the south Cush in the coalition against Israel. The geography of the ancient prophecy accounts for exactly this scenario. Whether Egypt's peace holds or fractures, the trajectory is clear. The conditions for its collapse are being assembled, and the prophetic framework anticipated it millennia ago. The Strait of Hormuz, that narrow waterway between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula, carries approximately 1/5 of the world's daily oil supply. Iran's disruption of maritime activities through the strait during the 2026 crisis triggered immediate and catastrophic consequences for global energy markets. Oil prices surged, European economies wobbled, Asian markets plunged, American consumers felt the pinch at the gas pump within days. And here's the prophetic dimension most people miss. Revelation 18 describes the fall of Babylon the Great, a global economic system in language that emphasizes maritime trade. The merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her because no one buys their cargo anymore. Ships' captains stand far off and watch the smoke of her burning. The global economy is fragile. One choke point controlled by one of the nations Ezekiel named can send the entire system into crisis. We are watching in real time how quickly the scaffolding of global commerce can shake when one strait is threatened. The infrastructure for economic collapse, sudden, dramatic, centered on maritime trade already exists, and in 2026 it was nearly triggered. Now step back with me all the way back and see the full picture. Because it's not one prophecy, it's not 2, it's not even 5. It's a convergence, a simultaneous, multidimensional collision of ancient scripture and modern reality that has no precedent in human history. Prophecy 1, Zechariah 12 verse 3, Jerusalem would become an immovable rock, a burden to all nations. In 2026, every major world power is entangled in conflict centered on that city. The crisis extends beyond military confrontation into global energy, economics, religion, and geopolitics. Prophecy 2, Ezekiel 38, a coalition of Russia, Iran, Turkey, and African nations would form against Israel in the latter days. In 2026, these exact nations are aligned militarily, economically, and ideologically against Israel for the first time in modern history. Prophecy 3, Isaiah 56 verse 7 and Psalm 122 verse 6, the nations would gather to pray for Jerusalem's peace. In 2026, 70 million believers from 175 nations unite in the largest prayer gathering for Jerusalem in history. Watchmen have taken their posts. The prayers are rising. Prophecy 4, Daniel 9 and Matthew 24, a temple would exist where sacrifices are offered and then stopped by a desolating figure. In 2026, every physical element required for temple worship has been prepared. The red heifer ashes have been produced, priests are being trained, political support is growing, the ancient road has been uncovered. Prophecy 5, Isaiah 62 verse 6, watchmen would be posted on Jerusalem's walls who never fall silent. In 2026, a literal global program called Watchman on the Wall maintains around-the-clock intercession for Jerusalem. Prophecy 6, Numbers 19, a red heifer purification must precede any temple service. In 2025, the first red heifer burning and purification ceremony in over 2,000 years was conducted in Israel. Prophecy 7, the generation clock, Psalm 90:10 defines a generation as 70 or 80 years. Israel was reborn as a nation in 1948. Add 80 years, 2028. If the tribulation period spans 7 years, the precursor events would align precisely with this window, the window we are standing in right now. Prophecy 8, Revelation 18. A global economic system would face sudden, catastrophic collapse tied to maritime trade. In 2026, the Strait of Hormuz crisis demonstrated how quickly the global economy can be brought to its knees by a single choke point, controlled by one of Ezekiel's named nations. 8 ancient prophecies, written across 1,000 years of biblical history by different authors in different centuries, all pointing to the same city at the same time. Our time. But before I close, I need to say something that most prophecy videos won't say. Something the Bible says clearly, but that we often forget in the excitement of recognizing prophetic patterns. Prophecy unfolds through people, through real human beings, through mothers and fathers and children who didn't choose to live at the epicenter of ancient spiritual warfare. UN experts have warned that irreparable harm is being inflicted on the people of Jerusalem. In occupied East Jerusalem, thousands have been displaced, families have been demolished from their homes. Between 2021 and 2025, 144 Palestinians were killed in Jerusalem governorate alone. Over 11,500 were arrested. Israeli families live with missile sirens and bomb shelters as a permanent feature of daily life. Lebanese families on the northern border exist on a knife's edge. Iranian citizens, who had no voice in their government's decisions, bear the crushing weight of sanctions, warfare, and loss. The Bible doesn't sanitize the cost of prophecy. When Jesus looked out over Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives, knowing everything that was coming, knowing every prophecy that would unfold, he didn't celebrate. He wept. Luke 19 verse 41, as he approached Jerusalem and saw the city, he wept over it. Amid the political and military standoffs, it is civilians, the people with no seat at the negotiating table, no access to the bunkers of the powerful, who bear the fear, the disruption, the grief, and the uncertainty of every strike and every escalation. Recognizing prophetic fulfillment is not an invitation to watch from a distance like spectators at a show. It is a call to compassion, a call to prayer, a call to weep with those who weep, a call to act with the urgency of people who understand that time is running out. And that is exactly why the psalmist's command isn't casual. It isn't decorative, it isn't a bumper sticker. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Not the destruction, not the conquest, not the dominion, the peace. So where does this leave us? I'm not telling you the world ends tomorrow. I'm not asking you to sell your home, quit your job, or hide in a cave. Jesus himself said, "No one knows the day or the hour, not the angels in heaven, not even the Son, but only the Father." But I am telling you this, and I want you to hear it with everything in you. Jesus also said in that very same passage, Matthew 24 verse 33, "When you see all these things, know that it is near, right at the door." He didn't say if, he said when, he didn't say don't worry about it, he said know that it is near. Whether every detail has reached its final fulfillment, or whether we are watching the prophetic infrastructure being assembled piece by piece, the direction is undeniable. The pattern is unmistakable, the acceleration is measurable, and the convergence is unprecedented. Jerusalem is surrounded militarily, politically, spiritually. The nations are gathering in conflict and in prayer. The temple preparations are advancing with precision and purpose. The red heifer has been burned, the first purification in 2,000 years. The ancient road has been uncovered, stones seeing daylight for the first time in 20 centuries. The coalition is forming, the exact nations Ezekiel named 2,600 years ago. The watchmen have taken their posts, millions of voices refusing to fall silent. The economic system trembles from a single choke point in a single strait. The divine calendar aligns YHWH and Elohim encoded in the same year. This is not one sign, this is not two signs. This is a flood of signs arriving simultaneously from every direction in every domain: military, spiritual, political, economic, archaeological, numerical, all pointing to one city, one moment, one conclusion. The prophets saw it, Isaiah proclaimed it, Ezekiel named it, Daniel described it, Zechariah declared it, Jesus warned about it, Paul explained it, John revealed it. And in 2026, we are watching it unfold. Whether every element has fully materialized or is still taking shape, the wise person does not wait for the flood to reach their door before building the ark. Noah was mocked for building before the rain. He was vindicated during the rain. The rain may not have started, but the clouds are gathering, the wind is shifting, and the barometric pressure of prophecy is dropping fast. The question is not whether these things are happening, they are happening. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Will you watch or will you prepare? Will you scroll past or will you fall to your knees? Will you wait for certainty or will you act on faith? Because faith has never been about certainty. Faith is hearing the watchman's trumpet and moving, even when you can't yet see what's coming over the hill. The trumpet is sounding, the watchmen are shouting, the signs are everywhere. Get your house in order, get your heart in order, get your relationship with God in order, not next week, not next month. No. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem, Psalm 122 verse 6. Watchman, what of the night? Isaiah 21 verse 11. Therefore keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come. Matthew 24 verse 42. He who testifies to these things says, Yes, I am coming soon. Amen. Come, Lord Jesus. Revelation 22 verse 20.